Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. This show is all about deals. We've talked about deals like lemonade stands, all the way to special purpose acquisition companies and publicly traded companies, and kind of everything in between. The goal and the mission, the purpose, everything we do here is to educate ourselves on different types of deals, to go on the hunt for our partners, find cool deals, and then put people together to do deals. Right? Everything we do here is for that purpose. So, before we dive into today's interview, if you have a deal that you'd like to talk about here on the show or educate the community on, head over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, and maybe get you on the show next. Now, let's dive into today's interview with Mr. Dave. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. All right. Where do you call home? Let's start with that.
I live right outside of Boston in a town called Scituate, Massachusetts. And it's funny because if you saw how it was written and you try to pronounce it, you probably pronounce it wrong. And it's like Scituate. So a lot of times they'll do when teams come to play pro teams here in Boston, they'll interview the opposing players and they'll say, here are towns in Massachusetts that, can you pronounce the names? And Scituate is always on the list. It's about 25 miles south of Boston, right near about a mile from the ocean.
Okay, super cool. Now I'm looking at your LinkedIn and I see the ocean in the background. Is that actual Scituate Ocean?
Scituate Ocean. It's Minot Beach. It's, as I said, it's about a mile from where I live.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's not, it's funny. It's a typical Northeast Massachusetts type of beach. It's not like a Florida beach where these big sands and all that stuff. It's a little bit rocky. It's a little bit, a little gritty, but no, it's great. It's
Do
awesome.
you go swimming in it? Do you do the polar plunge, for example?
The polar plunge, no, I've not done that. From time to time, yes, I'll go swimming in the ocean, especially if my kids are not around. But yeah, no, it's swimmable. It's a decent beach to be
I'm
at.
a Florida
During
boy.
the
That sounds terrifying, like the how cold it probably is. But
yeah,
man,
that
holy moly.
and then the sharks and like it's like every now and then, we live about an hour north of Cape Cod. So whenever there's a shark sighting in Cape Cod, which there's increasingly more, everybody here freaks out. And it's like, oh, you got to worry about getting in the water because there could be sharks around
No kidding. Are you afraid of sharks?
here. Just the big ones.
Okay, got it. Just the ones that bite me.
Uh,
So Dave, who are you?
wow, that's a good one. I'd say, I'm somebody I like to call myself a storyteller. And when it comes to professionally, it's about telling growth stories. So I'm one of those people that sits between sales, marketing, product, and partnerships as an operator at companies, and really looks at how do you take all of those things, put it together, and tell a really good growth story that leads to a great outcome, an exit or a sale or going public or something like that. But overall, right at the bottom, at the base of things, I like to consider myself a good storyteller.
So when it comes to the deal, or when taking a company public, or getting funding, or whatever the case may be, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn, you've been a part of some really interesting deals, right? And maybe you could share
Yeah,
some of the things that you've been
sure.
a part of. What's it take to tell a good story about a deal?
Yeah, I have been a part of a bunch of interesting stories across my career where, when you're trying to piece together the the finance part of the deal, and then the follow, the outcome of the deal or what happens afterwards, that story has to be something that makes commercial sense. Obviously, you have to be able to see where this is going to benefit not just the acquirer and the seller, but how is this going to position the company in most cases for future growth or future success. And so it takes really starting to look at, the executive team and the product market fit, what's going on with the market and the economy. All of those things really kind of come into play when you're starting to write the story for a company when it's getting ready for a deal.
Okay. Now, Why don't you share some of the things that you've been a part in the past so we could kind of get an idea of what kind of deals or the magnitude of deals?
Yeah. So I've been with companies throughout my career where we were private and then we IPO'd. I've been with companies where we were VC backed and we had to get funding a number of times. I've been with private equity based back companies, and I think when it comes to like I always remember back to the first deal I was involved with. I was with this company called FactSet Research Systems. They're a publicly traded company, ticker symbol FDS. And I was one of the original people at the company. I was like employee number 50. We went public. And shortly after we went public, we started to look to grow the company through acquisition. And I'll never forget, we made this first acquisition of a company that had a technology that was interesting. It was a really small acquisition, and it was probably at the time the smart thing for us to do because we none of us knew anything about acquiring companies and what it took to do that. And so we acquired this company, and the guy who's the founder, obviously took the money and gets to be part of the company. And I'll never forget the first meeting we had with the guy. He was a startup guy. Company was less than 10 million in revenues. Here we were a couple hundred million in revenues. And first meetings in, he's trying to tell us all how to do our business, like how to change things and do things better. And everybody on the call was just kind of like looking around like, who the hell is this guy? And I'll never forget. I said to him, I said, look, Rich, the guy's name's Rich. I said, Rich, with all due respect, we love you. We think this is going to be great. You're part of a bigger organization now. And, in order for this to work, it's going to have to require us all to work together. And I think, you got to manage your expectations a bit. We're not the little startup that you were before. It was an interesting indoctrination to how you can, acquire companies and ingest companies into yours going forward.
Yeah. It's like a marriage, right? When you acquire, you get the different people, but different people are used to working in a different system, right? A startup guy, like I'm a startup guy. I'm a small, medium-sized kind of guy.
Yeah.
Me working for a corporate, if our group was acquired, like I probably wouldn't last long unless I was in an innovative group, small culture, being able to
Right.
be agile and such like that. So through the years of you doing these kind of things, you've seen the
Yeah.
merge of stuff, and you have to then start selling the story externally, but also internally too, right?
Absolutely.
What's
Absolutely.
your
So,
experience been there?
yeah, no, on the flip side, I was part of an acquisition. I was brought in as chief marketing officer of a company called EDGAR Online. EDGAR Online is a company a lot of people in finance have heard about. They produce data from financial statements, make it easy for people to do analysis on financial information. And it had been around for a long time, and we turned around and we sold that company to R. Donnelley, which was a large printing company at the time. And to your point, here we are, we have this technology, we're a technology oriented company. I, like you, more wired as an entrepreneur and all that. And so when we made the deal, it was pretty obvious we're being bought by a publishing company, like a printing company. Literally, they printed books at the time. So they've since kind of split off in a bunch of different companies, but at the time it was a printing company. And so you had to sell. We did a great job of selling the story for the acquisition. And then once the acquisition occurred, we actually had to turn around and tell the employees, look, this is an exciting thing, right? And anybody who's like, technologically oriented or entrepreneurial is going, what are you talking about? We're going to a printing company. But it's really starting to talk a little bit about the opportunities that you can have. You can look at maybe going in different directions with your career. It's, there's some stability we're going to get from all of this. So there are some things you have to sell. And I was pretty much put in charge when we did that acquisition of retaining the employees and making sure we didn't lose any talent. And that was a difficult thing to do because you want to maintain your integrity. You don't want to be telling people lies. And that there's some people who are not going to make it because, bureaucracy is just too much. And ultimately I ended up becoming one of those people where I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. But that's definitely something that's important.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy named Les McEwen, and he talks about, I think I pronounced his name right, but he wrote a book called Predictable Success, and he talks about the different stages of a business. And then like he said, one of the things that was really important to me is know what stage of business you really enjoy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, I really like the scale, the startup, the growth side of business. Like I really like the ideas and the vision and such. And there's some people who really like systems and processes, operations, and all that stuff. Just not for me. In that in the different stages of business, like where do you find most joy when working with a business?
Well, that's interesting. That's a good question. And I'll tell you this, that changes over time.
Yeah.
Um, when I was in my 20s and 30s, it was all about like the grind. Like I want to go figure like I'll go run my head against the wall. I'll go to figure out a problem, right? So I don't care if you can have 2 million in revenues. I don't care. I'll go figure it out. I loved it. As I've gotten older and I've seen some things, you start to look at, okay, well, where can I really add some more value? And I'm finding that I'm one of those people that actually can add velocity to something that's already getting traction. So for me, a sweet spot is a company or a group that has proven the concept, they have customers, so you're at a point where you got a real business, but now you got problems. You got problems with the pipeline. You got problems with the product fit. You got problems with the messaging, and it's not a problem that's going to sink the company. It's a problem that's just hindering your growth. That part to me, I love walking into those situations because pretty quickly I can see where the problem is, and then start developing the solution. And so that's probably where I'd put myself. If I was working for a large company, it would have to be in a group or in a division where it's like small, growing, and there's a lot of upside
Yeah.
because you don't put me in something that's it's already like established. That would be a bad fit for everybody involved.
Yeah. So you said it has to be something that's growth, that has upside. You add velocity to traction. So like when you're looking at these kind of opportunities, you're like, oh yeah, this is the sweet spot for me. What are some things that companies do to inhibit growth? That little tweaks they can do to really help maximize their growth?
Yeah, that's what's interesting, I think a lot of times, and I don't care how big you are, is you get hung up on the way you always used to do things,
Yeah.
right? If you don't keep an open mind, and you're not thinking about, that there's other new ways to do things, you run the risk of stagnating. So I don't care if you're a startup and you're a founder and you're like, we've been doing this for the last 5 years. Well, maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe you need to change it up to unlock the growth. So I think not being open-minded is probably the biggest thing that companies do to hinder their growth.
Yeah. And when it comes to being open-minded, one of the things that I've seen, bringing in an outside perspective in this. So, I'm looking at your website, and you do some fractional work. Is that right?
Yeah.
Where you'll
Yeah.
come in as
Yeah.
a fractional person, maybe not a full-time employee. Like when would be a good time to bring in Dave to a deal?
It depends on who's bringing in, right?
Yeah.
If you're private equity or venture capital, you're looking at doing due diligence and you want somebody to do some analysis of, okay, what's the sales team like? What's the marketing team like? How's the product team? How's the executive team working together? What's the culture like there? So if you're going to be looking to do some diligence, people would want to talk to me because I've seen a lot of, particularly for me personally, in technology-oriented companies, recurring revenue-based businesses. Those are the kinds of businesses that I do a lot of work in. If you're on the operator side, if you're on a founder side, you're at a point where you're like, look, um, I think I've got an idea that's working. I'm starting to see some traction, but I'm a technical founder. I know nothing about sales. I know nothing about marketing. I need somebody to come in and start to build a framework of processes for me. I can't afford somebody full time. Can you help me on a couple days a week or on a fractional basis? That is probably the right time.
Okay. And then you have a group called the Sling Stone Group.
Yeah.
What's the origin of that name before we dive into, some of the things?
Yeah. So Slingstone Group is a group of one. And though I've got many fans and followers, so it's great that you could be part of that if you want.
Go,
But
Dave, go. Go. And
yeah,
you
right.
call them Friends of Dave. And we'll get
Yes, I
into that
do.
in a
I
little
do.
bit.
Yeah, I do. But the origin of that is basically a little bit of what we're talking about. You think about David and Goliath being the big business problem, and David being the startup. Um, David defeated Goliath by slinging stones at Goliath. And so my thought is you need somebody to help you pick out the stones that you're going to sling so you can defeat the beast. And that's generally where I like to position myself.
How many stones? This is trivia. I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh no.
Dave went down to the creek. He was seeing the big guy yelling and such, and he picked out a group of stones. How many stones did he pick up?
I knew this at one time.
I
And,
totally
and,
put
and
you
of
on the
course
spot.
you totally put me on the spot. I'm gonna say 5, but
I
you
think
tell me
so.
the right answer.
I think so. I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know.
I'll have to go look. But it's certainly not the biggest stone. I know
Yeah,
that it wasn't the biggest stone. It doesn't matter. It's got to be the right one.
the right
And
stone.
I think for everybody, what's also important, I'm a believer in is you can't look at it and say there's the same stone's going to work for every Goliath, right?
Yeah.
Your Goliath is different than my Goliath or somebody else's. And so you need somebody to sit there and assess and go, for this type of problem, this is what you're going to need. And that's what I think is important.
Yeah. So let's use this analogy and go with, let's just say there's 5 stones. Someone's going to have to fact
Okay.
check or something like that,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. Let's just say there's 5 stones. So what are 5 components? Let's see if we can work through this for sales and marketing for a company going after a big problem that maybe Microsoft is trying to work on or whatever. Like what are some components? And maybe we don't get all 5, but let's just play that game. See
Oh,
if
I
we
can I can list off 5.
Okay, let's go for
You
it.
ready?
Yeah.
And because I do talk about this actually with clients and people I work with. I have 4 that I can, and I'll add a 5th on. It's called UACE. UACE. Urgency, accountability, communication, and empathy. And I'll throw another one on there and call it trust. Okay. And so I think you start with those, right? If you are trying to grow a business and I don't care if you're trying to work yourself toward a deal, you're trying to attract an investor. If you don't have a culture that's based on urgency, accountability, communication, empathy, and trust, you're going to have a hard time.
Huh.
So UACE, urgency, accountability, and empathy, means you'll ace the problem. You'll ace the test. I'm
Nice.
throwing trust on there because we said 5.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I think that's great. So you go into a company and let's just say they're looking to be acquired, right? So they're starting to work
Yep.
through, they started building up, they started
Yep.
working with business brokers or investment bankers or
Yep.
whatever. And they need to start building out their sales and marketing process. Like they came in, they said, "You're not
Yep.
ready to be sold yet.
Yep.
Go talk to Dave. Come back in a year when you're ready to be sold," right? What are
Yep.
some of the things that a founder, we're 10 million or whatever in revenue, and we need to get to a point where we could sell, but we don't have that yet. What do I
Yeah.
need to look for?
I've been a part of that situation. And I think that the biggest thing is, again, it gets back to, you got to be willing to have an open mind and be willing to change the way you've done things. If you are not ready to be bought or acquired or to go through the process, means you need to grow up a little bit. In most cases, you need to get some processes in place. You need to get profitable. You need to look at, your what's driving growth. I think the biggest thing too is you need to look at, what are your KPIs that are the biggest drivers of your business. You need to stop and think about that, and be willing to do some brainstorming on that and go, look, these are the 5 to 10 things that we know are the key indicators of the success of our business. And it all is tied to how you're telling your story, right? If you have a set of KPIs that you have established and are a framework of how you operate, it allows you to tell a really convincing story. Even if maybe the growth isn't working the way you want it to go, you still can talk about that. So I usually come in and I look at, is your culture ready for that? Is your culture ready for some accountability? Is your culture ready to change and become more focused around KPIs and some formal processes? if I was part of a company, I was brought in basically to this alternative lending company back in the it was 2016, where it was exactly the case. Hey, we got to polish this apple up, and we want to go out and try to get some private equity. The problem was the founder was saying the right things, but didn't really want to do what was required to make those changes to make it work.
Yeah.
And when that occurs, well, you can sit there and say you want to get private equity brought in. You can say that you want to do that, but if you're not willing to make changes and change the way you've done things and get more formal with your processes, it's not going to happen. And it didn't. And that was just the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen this a lot, working with, interviewing thousands of people. And this is what I want, right? I want to raise capital. I want to grow and sell a business. And then you're like, okay, the thing that hits me the most in your UACET is accountability, right? As a founder,
Yeah.
I operated as a sole proprietor for a really long time. And then I started working with investors, and then I scaled something, and then now I have team members and partners. And, like when you have a bunch of like high level, thinkers, they are not me, but there has to be accountability between the founding team and
Yeah.
between the different team members. And that's tough. What suggestion do you have for building that out for a guy or gal who's been running and gunning on their own without accountability?
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I would actually say, if you're successful, you're growing your business and you're successful, you probably do have a measure of accountability built in. You're
To my
probably just more
wife.
accountable to yourself. Yeah, right. But you're to yourself,
Yeah.
you're goal oriented, or I'm gonna accomplish this, whatever. So you're probably wired that way. There are some cultures that aren't. But obviously it comes down to some of the other aspects of what I pointed out. If you need to be properly aligned with a board or investors and other partners, right? So that requires good communication, setting expectations. Knowing that if I say I'm going to deliver a product by the end of this quarter, I'm going to do it. And if for whatever reason I can't, I'm going to let you know. Why? Because I know you're expecting me to do that. And on a number of levels, I also have to have empathy for you and saying, I know you're expecting this. I know you're looking to do this. And I know that if I don't deliver, it's going to create a problem for you. And I know what that feels like when somebody doesn't deliver for me. So
Mm.
I'm going to communicate to you. So it's, what I gave you there with the UACE thing is all kind of intertwined, right? It's like, so accountability requires good communication. It requires empathy. In of itself, and so that way it requires trust amongst the members that are there. So I think that's kind of what I would say to somebody is like, look, you probably are already accountable. Now you got to know that you've got a wider net that you're involved with here, and you've got to be able to be accountable to them too.
Yeah. You know what's really awesome, and we might have created this together. If you mix up the words a little bit, it spells acute.
Acute.
A
I like
bad or
that.
difficult or unwelcome situation or phenomenon.
Yeah, I
Because
like
we added
that.
that fifth stone in there. Huh? How do you like
Yeah, that's
that?
right. I like acute. I like that.
Acute
Yeah, that would make this an
problem.
acute meat. Yeah, or an acute meat. Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
I'm looking at some books behind you on your desk, and the Atomic Habits. Did you
Yep.
finish reading that?
I haven't finished it.
Okay.
That which is ironic if you think about it, right?
Step
The
one,
whole
pick a
yeah,
book. Step two, read
book.
it.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think it's it's a fascinating story about a guy who's a pitcher. James Clear, I think his name is, and he was a pitcher who had to improve his process of throwing. And he learned to do that through Atomic Habits. And so yeah, no, it was something that's been recommended to me. And I do need to finish. Yeah.
So it's in the background. It looks good on the podcast thing.
Sure.
It's really good. If you
Yeah.
did have a recommendation for a book for fellow deal makers and storytellers and something to improve their craft as a deal maker, what's a good recommendation that is a typical go-to?
I'm gonna throw you a curveball.
Nice.
and tell you there's a book that I read that was recommended by maybe a source you wouldn't think about, Mr. Rogers. Maybe you've heard about this book because you've talked to people. It's called Deep and Simple. Okay.
Interesting.
Deep and Simple. It's not a long read. And it's really about getting to the essence of keeping everything in your life deep and simple. Learn more. Keep an open mind. But don't clutter yourself, clutter your space, your mental space with things that are going to be complicated. We do that to ourselves all the time. Deep and simple.
So the opposite of deep is shallow, right? And then
Sure.
the opposite of simple is complex.
Yeah.
So like, so I guess is this a self-help book? Is this a business book? Is it a
It's not
framework?
it's not a business book. It's probably a little bit more, it's an out there kind of maybe it's more self-help, but I think when you start to think about, I don't care if you're working on a deal, I don't care whatever you're working on,
Yeah.
right? If you're working on a deal, or you're looking at a company, or you're looking at a business problem, sometimes what we try to do is rationalize the things that we want to have happen. And I think we make that mistake and we overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Or we don't go at the root of what the real thing is. Like we look at what's on the surface and we're not looking beneath the surface, right? If you're having issues in a deal with an executive, a founder, let's say, or vice versa, you're a founder, and for whatever reason, there are problems, that are occurring during the deal with the acquirer or the partner, the investment partner you're looking at. There's probably a deeper problem that you're not even addressing, right?
Yeah.
So let's go deep and simple. And if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Don't force it.
Yeah. When it comes to depth and for your life, as you're reading this book or as you're just thinking and getting on podcast interviews and writing Friends of Dave, which I want to chat with you about some of the things
Yeah,
I read
sure.
on Friends of Dave, is what's a topic or what's something that's like drawing you to go deeper, like whether you're in the shower or when you're trying to go to
Yeah,
bed, and
yeah.
like what keeps you up, and like, or what thoughts make you want to go deeper? What perplexes you?
Uh, yeah, I think what I as I've gotten older too, you think a lot about whether it's in business, whether it's with deals, whether it's in personal life. It's like, what are those things? What are those obstacles that are avoidable,
Mhm.
you know, that we create to die to like short circuit us?
Yeah.
And to me, there are times when you're sitting there in your own life, you got your own problem you're trying to solve, right? It's thinking about, okay, did I create this obstacle? Did I create this? What's the root of this? What's causing this problem, right? And I think what I've been finding is that half the time the obstacles we face are self-created. And we're not willing to have the humility, or we're not willing to have the or we don't have the time to take a step back and look at it and go, man, this problem is not actually that hard. This problem is actually simple. I just got to stop doing this, right? I want to
Mhm.
lose weight. Well, stop. You know what? Stop eating the Halloween candy. You know what I mean? Like, you want to, there's things, it's just, there's a simple answer to a lot of things. And so we create these obstacles for ourselves. And I think those are things that I think about, when
Yeah.
I look at things. And that's, you could translate that into business, right? You could sit there
Sure.
and you could look at an operating team, and you're going, well, why are we not growing faster? Well, you're not growing faster. It's a simple answer. You're not growing faster because you're not bringing enough revenue, right? You're
Mhm.
not bringing enough revenue. Why are you not bringing enough revenue? Well, maybe the product that you think that you want to bring to market isn't what the market wants, right? You got to be willing to admit that and say that. So many people don't.
Yeah.
You're
Ah,
afraid to be wrong. Like, I'm
so
afraid
afraid
to,
to be wrong.
yeah, yeah, right?
Yeah. It's so good. I was having a conversation with a guy. We have an academy, and he was going through it, and he's like, I'm a problem solver. And he goes, he stepped into it as a CEO of this role, and and he grew the company, and now it's kind of operating, and he's just there's no more problems to solve, so he's creating problems, right?
Oh, all right.
Self-inflicted obstacles,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, for a guy like that, it's like know when to get out, know when to like
Yeah.
hand off and go find another problem to solve, right?
I think that's a really good point. Self-sabotage, right? It's like, I was talking to somebody this past week. They, they were applying for a new job,
Yeah.
and they were questioning whether they were qualified for that. And it was like, no, you're good. You're going to do great. And then it came to like sending the thank you notes afterwards. And it took them like 2 days to write a bunch of thank you note emails. Now, as you know, we're talking thank you note emails are like a couple sentences long. Don't need to That's a form of self-sabotage. It's like you're sitting there saying, I just don't know. I'm going to create a reason for them not to want to pick me, right? And
Yeah.
it's like as you point out, it's like if you're a problem solver, keep it simple. If there's no By the way, there's still problems to solve. You can't solve every problem, right?
Right.
There's always going to be a problem. But if you're one of those people that needs a crisis all the time, then yeah, move on. Go somewhere else where there's a crisis. That's where they could leverage you more.
Yeah. So with this whole thing of this deep and simple, what is something in your world that you're going, all right, maybe I need to go deeper in this level, right? So you talk about like avoidable obstacles. So what is an
Yeah.
avoidable obstacles that you have found for you in your business as you're
Mhm.
growing it out? And then
Mhm.
for other businesses. So,
Yeah. So for me personally, it's I have a very clear picture of what I think you should do. That's another thing we could talk about is about should, right? Should's a bad thing.
don't shit on me, right?
Yeah, should is really bad. But I have a clear thing of picture in my mind of what I think you should do. And so I'm going to sit there and I'm one of those people that will more or less go that no, that's the answer, right? That's the way I think, and when I come to that conclusion, it's with a lot of thought. So I'm thinking through a lot of different, it's not just a quick thing.
Right.
The problem is that if I try to push that on you and say, this is your solution, this is what you've got to do, and you haven't bought into it, the first thing you're gonna do is resist.
Yeah.
You don't want to make that change. Because I don't know if I trust you, or I don't know if I'm afraid. I'm whatever. So one of the challenges I have is that, look, I'll see something and I'll go full force and say, let's go do that. And
Totally.
you realize you gotta finesse it, and you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta you gotta kind of maybe don't go all the way in, maybe go a little bit and get somebody to buy in a little bit more and get there. I think that for me personally is a challenge I always have. I have a passion, I have enthusiasm, and it's all coming from a good place.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help you, but maybe you don't want everything I'm asking, I'm saying. And so I gotta learn to manage that.
Yeah, I suffer the same thing. I've seen a lot, right? I've been a part of venture capital, private equity, and I've been
Yeah.
a part of all these things, and I built stuff, lost stuff, been bankrupt, been right. So
Yeah.
I've seen a lot and I've experienced a lot. I've had my teeth kicked in a few times. So when I see someone going down a similar path, my warning signs are flying off.
Yeah.
And I ran into this not too long ago. Is I was gonna go fix all these guys' problems, right? He's
Yeah.
a founder, and something in me was just like, he's not ready. He's not ready
Yeah.
to have all the answers yet. He may need to suffer a little bit, and I didn't want that to happen for him. But
Yeah.
as a fractional person, or sometimes we step into advisory or consultative roles, we got to let our clients sometimes come up with the conclusion on their own. That's hard for
Yes.
me.
Well, yeah, and I just actually, not to segue in this, I did write about this in the newsletter a couple weeks ago, where I had a conversation with somebody who, it was one of those networking. We all have those. Somebody's like, "Hey, you should talk to my friend, so and so, and whatever." And we get on the phone, and it was an odd situation for me to be in. This person all of a sudden started finding these problems that I didn't know I had, that they were going to fix for me. And they started saying, "Oh, you should do this. You should do that. Oh, did you think about doing this? Did you think about doing that?" And whatever. And I'm sitting there going, "Dude, this is just an intro call. My friend said we were just going to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't. I didn't need you to come at me like that. Like, cool your jets, bro." And it's like that kind of thing. But I know that the guy was doing it to be helpful, right? I know
Right.
he was seeing something I didn't see, but I didn't ask for it. I didn't, and I probably need to get my teeth kicked in, and then go, oh, you know what he was telling me a couple months ago was probably the right thing, right?
Yeah.
We all have to do that, but we do it because why? Think about it. Why do you do that? Like, why do you say, oh, I see this and I want to help you? Who's that
Empathy.
really helping? Well, you think it's empathy. That's not empathy. Empathy is going, man, you got that problem. Oh, that sucks. I'm really sorry. You know how that feels. I'm here for you. That's empathy. No, you're actually when we and I say you, I do the same thing. So it's not just you. It's
FactSet.
like, no, you're solving a problem for you. I want to feel good about helping this person. I want to be the person who's saving them. That's for me. I'm doing
Projection
that for
and
me.
ego, right?
Yeah, I'm doing that for me. And it's really, yeah, you're the residual effect, but it's really to make me feel good about myself. But empathy isn't about solving the problem. Empathy is acknowledging the problem and going, "Oh, that sucks. I hate when that happens. But I'm here for you while you suffer." And
Wow.
it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing.
Oh my gosh. And as a problem solver, as entrepreneurs, we see a problem, we can't wait to dive in. And
That's
that guy
right.
had no bridle, right? He just went all in. He's like, "Oh, hey, your name's Dave. Oh, hey, Dave, by the way, your website and this and this and that
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and blah," right? He just vomits on
Yes.
you without
Yeah.
trust, without credibility, without relationship and all those things on
Right.
the acute scale, right?
Yeah, right, right.
Huh. So as you're learning about this for yourself, how do you oh, this question. Your business is fixing problems, whether they
Yep.
want to be bought, sold, funded, whatever the case may be,
Right.
grow scale. So you see on the initial, you see stuff and you see stuff that you can fix right off the bat and then you see stuff, you see the plan, you spend a lot of time thinking. How do you go from pre-client to client where you just like you're itching to fix to help them, like how do you balance that by giving stuff away and then moving into a client relationship?
Yeah, that's it's tough, and it is something that you you do have to um you have to have patience with yourself on this one, and you have to go, okay, look, there's a number of things that can be fixed here. Let's find the one that they want to be fixed first, right? And let's focus on that, right? So I'm actually working with somebody right now where they're trying to create like this culture book kind of initiative for their company, and I'm consulting a CMO who's looking to do this for CEO, and the CEO is just like, get this done, just get it done, get it done. And I see that this is a problem because the CEO is not fully invested in this project. They're just saying, just get it done. Like, you create this solution for me and use whatever resources you need to just get it done. And what you realize is like, okay, if you come back with anything other than, okay, we're going to give you what you want, then the CEO is going to go, what the hell is this? You're not even, you missed the memo. You don't get the memo. This is what I want. Right. But so
Yeah.
you got to package it in a way where it's like, I'm going to give you what you want, but it's not really what you want. I'm going to come back with something that's going to make you think about what you really need. And
Yeah.
so you can't come right out and say, no, I'm not going to do it. And when I first started consulting, I did that a lot. I'd come right back to you and say, you don't want that. Why are you wasting your time with that? And you lose clients real quick that way because they're like, oh, they didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear yes. They didn't want to hear no. So you got to kind of figure out a way to finesse it so that way you're saying no while saying yes at the same time, really, in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And to get there, like I've gone into consulting gigs or whatever where I step in and I'm just like wild, wild west. I'm like, boom, here's an issue, here's an issue. And then what happened is, even if I was right, what that tells the other person is you didn't see this and look how fast I solved your problems because of how smart I am. And I was just like, ah, geez, like take more time, Josh, to make sure that before you're giving advice, get the full picture, get
And
the
that
full
they trust you.
dynamics, and that
And
they
that they
trust you.
trust you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that takes time. I'm
Yeah.
impatient, right? Now,
Yeah.
you're a you got, Slingstone, and you said it's me and a team of one, right? Um, was this self-designed, or do you have envisions of building it to have a bunch of employees or team members, or what does the future look like for
I,
Slingstone?
I I I would say it's not necessarily by design. I'm one of those people. I'm better on teams. I'm much better on team. I'd actually prefer to be full time with the right team. And as I get older, I find that too. We all got through COVID where we were working, from home, and just kind of isolated, and that really solidified for me. I'd rather be on team. So it's not something where I'm sitting there saying, nope, I like being an individual contributor, and I only want to do this and be the team of one. No, no, no. That's part of the reason why I have this newsletter. It makes me feel like I got a group of people that are on my team all the time, right? And so, yeah, no, I look at it as a way to get into the right situations, and getting back to the core of what your this podcast is about. It's I do like being parts of deals, right?
Mhm.
So if you're looking, if somebody's looking for somebody to come on first to help me to advise, but then it's like, look, why don't you help me get this to the next step? Whether you're an investor or you're an operator, or your founder, I ultimately want to find those opportunities where I can be a part of that and realize the fruits of my labor, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah. You mentioned, so with that, let's just recreate the perfect scenario with you and for you, right? And we're like, all right, now Josh is part of the team and we're building something together. Do you see yourself being, a part of multiple teams, like as still as fractional, but stepping in and maybe helping four companies at a time go to public or get acquired or get funding or something? Or do you think it's just like, all right, I've got this one, Slingstone's going all in on this company for the next 5 years? What's more ideal for
It
you?
could go. To be honest, it could be either way. Honestly, I would do either equally, and I'm not baiting it. It's just like if you said to me there were four companies that were. I also had this passion for data oriented companies. Like I
Okay.
believe every business is a data business, right? So if you're looking to make a digital transformation and turn your business into a data and analytics oriented business, and you said to me, we have a portfolio of companies that are like that, and we need somebody to come in and develop sales marketing strategies, product strategies for those companies. I would love to do that because it's like four different problems. It's the same problem, but
Yeah.
four flavors of the same problem to solve. But then at the same time, if somebody presented me an opportunity and they were like, look, this thing, you know, we got, we got smart money in this company. You see where the industry, where it's going. You're like, this thing's going to be a couple $1 billion in a couple years. What we need is the right foundation. I'd be like, all right, I'm in. So
Mhm.
it's just really depends on the situation.
Copy that. So, if I were to say, sing Tom Jones song, "Sweet Caroline,"
It's not Tom Jones though.
not oh
Neil
shoot,
Neil
Neil Diamond,
Neil Diamond,
Neil
man,
Diamond.
come on now. You can't even come to Boston.
I
You
would get
can't be.
murdered at Boston.
You get murdered in Boston if you didn't know that.
But
Anyway, go ahead.
yeah, you're supposed to yell out. I'm reading your
So
Friends of
good, so
Dave.
good.
Okay. So I say this and I totally, oh my gosh, and I grew up listening to this. My dad and I loved
Yeah.
it. But yeah, in your Friends of Dave newsletter, it's so fun. I'm reading through like 300 bullet points, and you said in that, if you don't yell so good during Sweet Caroline, we cannot be friends. I thought that was fun. So
Yeah.
we're now friends, even though I butchered the artist.
It's
Um,
all right.
talk to us about Friends of Dave and why do you do that, right? So fractional sales and
Yeah.
marketing, and you're doing this, but you have this fun newsletter that you talk a lot about food and biscuits, by the way.
Well, it's being driven by the audience as well. Yeah, I've been doing it for it'll be 6 years in January. It's a weekly email, and it's a marketing piece. I mean, in many ways. I mean, if you look at it from a what's it all about? It's about staying connected and engaged with your network on a weekly basis. The people who sign up for it get it, and they hear from me now on a weekly basis. And you chose to sign up for it, so you're hearing my voice through my intro every week, and so that makes it easy when something's going on. If I need to reach out to you, you need to reach out to me. It's almost like we've spoken every once a week for the last 6 years. And I like to write. I like to tell stories. I've got kids, I got work, there's things that come up during the week, and it's like, I know I'm not the only one who's dealing with this. So let's put it all on, let's write it down. 800 to 1,000 words of what my thoughts are for the week. And then I share a bunch of links to stories. Some of those are business related. Some of them are just random stories that you're going to find entertaining and of value. And, what I found over the last 5.5 years, it goes out on Saturday mornings. People actually open it. You're sitting maybe you're at a kid's sporting event, and it's really going slow, and you're scrolling on your phone, and you got something that's like makes you laugh or makes you think, or you bookmark something. I get texts and emails every week from people who are like, yeah, that was good, or hey, did you think about this, or hey, this is an article you need to include. And so again, it's all about just keeping the network engaged.
Yeah. I think it's fun to have an outlet, right? Like, so a lot of times we get so professional and we get so rigid as LinkedIners, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nice to have a fun place to have a passion project or a fun project on the side where it shows a little bit of the personality that pops through. What kind of milestones have you got? You had 300 episodes. Do you have a good amount of viewers who dive in and read this on a weekly basis with you?
No, I've got I think that the thing that I would say in terms of my own KPIs is that
Yeah,
over 50% of the people that get it, in terms are opening and engaging with it every week.
that's
Now, if
cool.
you're a marketer, you understand that
That's
kind of
huge.
open rate and engagement rate is not common. So I look at it and I'm like, if I've got a couple hundred people that are tuning in, and 50% of those are looking at it, that means over 100 people once a week are actually thinking about me. I'll take that. So I think that's the way I look at it. But it's really, I've said this to other people, if nobody opened it, I'd probably still do it. It's
Yeah,
like, because it's like it's a way for me to get stuff out of my head.
yeah. So this is for my old Sunday school teacher back in the day when we had the felt things. I just did a fact check. It was 5 smooth stones, so we were right.
Okay. There
You
you
win a
go.
prize, Dave. Um, so as you're building, as you're building your group, and what are your favorite types of deals, right? What's the perfect deal? So someone in the audience is like, actually, man, that's me, right? So you mentioned,
Yeah.
venture-backed business or a private equity group that's looking to scale out or do an acquisition. But
Yeah.
what's like the perfect deal for you?
Perfect deal for me would be recurring revenue business.
Mhm.
Um, you've got a good, not perfect, but a good technology that you're selling. Preferably data and analytics kind of business. And what I mean by that is that people are leveraging your tool to gather intelligence to make better decisions. Um, you have a low churn rate with your customers, so you're finding that like people love us, right?
Yeah.
And what you just need is you need to get more people on board. You need more people to be aware. You need a bigger ecosystem of partners. That's what is really the big hindrance, is that you just not enough people know about this thing. Let's go out there and let's start going to tell people. That to me, go. And then I think on top of it, we talked about this early on, is you got to have the culture that's ready for that growth, right? I think to me, if you're like entrepreneurial, you're collaborative, your team that's like excited about growth and open-minded, um that I think is a bullseye. Like, you put all this stuff I just said and you got that culture already there, man, forget it. The sky's the limit for you.
So for that to happen, if someone in the audience has that, right? They got recurring revenue, they got good technology, data analytics driven to help people find intelligence to make business decisions, low churn rate, but they just need a larger ecosystem. They need more people to put into the pipeline in the funnel, and they want to connect with you to help do that. Where could they go to connect with you and do a deal?
I would say that the best place is either through LinkedIn or
Mhm.
go to my website, www.slingstonegroup.com. But LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. to get a hold of me. And yeah, that's the way. And the way to look at it is you're going, look, I need somebody to come in to help me tell the commercial growth story to make the deal happen. I need somebody who's going to come in and take a look at our business and help us write the book that we're going to put out there to get the investors. Or, hey, I'm an investor. I need somebody to come in and do due diligence. This is the story we need to be able to tell to put them in our portfolio, or we're looking to tell. Will they fit in the story? How do they fit in the story? That's probably where. And then, again, it's like, as I said about velocity, you want somebody to come in and shake it up and say, this is the way you should be doing. They should, do things. I've got some ideas, and be open-minded about it. Yeah, that would be a good fit.
Cool. During this interview, there's probably something I should have asked you, but screwed up and did not ask you. What question do you wish I would have asked you?
I think, one of the things we talked about, again, I think it's the role of culture in deals. I think that, what you might have asked is, what makes a deal go wrong, or what makes a deal, maybe you don't realize the value of a deal. And I've seen it happen a number of times where there's not enough attention being paid to culture around a deal. You sit there, you look at the financial statements, you look at the product, you look at the executive team, and that's all good. But is there a good culture that's either going to fit as part of an acquisition, or is there a good culture that's going to foster the growth that you're looking for, or the profitability you're looking for? I think people assume that it's just going to take care of itself. And it requires a lot more work than I think a lot of companies think about. And that's where, if you look at, why a deal doesn't work, why a company, an acquisition doesn't work, why a company fails after getting X amount of dollars in terms of investments, I would say, look at whether there was a good culture in place around that, and that could support it.
So when looking through the lens of culture for a potential acquisition, right, what are some things that deal makers should do when looking at culture from your experience?
Yeah, well, again, kind of gets back to the key tenets we were talking about before. I mean, are they urgent? Do they have accountability? Do they have, what kind of communication are you seeing from them? Do they have empathy for employees, for their customers? So those are key elements of a culture. What kind of trust do they foster? Those are some things that I would say look at. And then look at, is this a group of is this a company that walks the walk? Do they say they're going to do something, or do they say that? Do they seem like they got the right story, but they're actually, they're not. They don't look like they're going to practice that, right? Are they capable of doing that? Can you bring in the people to do that? Those are the things that I think that it needs to be looked at, and a lot of that's it's some of this is soft. It's not in a spreadsheet. It's not looking at KPIs. It's really about digging into the people and the organization that's going to support whatever it is you want from that investment. And I think, too often the folks involved in the deal might just be looking at, how do we do this fast? How do we make this happen as fast as possible, or whatever? And they don't really look at, the EQ of the executive team or something like that.
Yeah. Super good. Super good. So, fellow deal makers, as always, reach out to our guest and say thanks for being on the show, sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and your experiences. If they say something that resonates with you and you want to connect with them, or you want to join the Friends of Dave newsletter, all that contact information will be in the show notes, and just connect with them directly. Like I said before, if you have a deal that you'd like to talk about here on the Deal Scout, head over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form. Maybe we'll get you on the show next. Till then, we'll talk to you all on the next episode. See you, everybody.
Thanks, Josh.